Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Babur Nawaz Khan. I'm with 810 Networks Product Marketing, and today we will be talking about Zero Trust, compliance, and the TLS blind spot. Let's look at the agenda for today's session. So we will start by talking about the cyber threat landscape and what Zero Trust is. Then we will talk about some of the challenges that encryption is actually introducing into the whole idea of Zero Trust and how it helps the attackers to attack our network. Then we will talk about some of the challenges customers are facing with legacy solutions. And then finally, we will talk about 810 Networks SSL Insight solution and the advantage that you get with that solution. So let's begin. Let's talk about cybercrimes because the fact of the matter is that cybercrimes are on the rise. They keep going up. Attackers are always trying to find new ways of exploiting the weaknesses within our network. Part of the reason is because everyone wants to get to the data that we are holding. I know a lot of the people in the audience today are from the financial sector, so we know for sure that you guys are holding a lot of sensitive information about your customers in your network. And the attackers are always on the lookout for weaknesses within your network so that they can gain access to that data. The average cost of a data breach these days in the world is somewhere around $4 million per data breach, which is a huge number if you think about it. Another thing I want to mention here is the fact that Trojan-based malware threats have actually gone up by 650%. If you think about that, that is such a huge number that it's pretty much incomprehensible. And the reason I say Trojan-based malware threats is because I'm talking about these new kinds of attacks that can be called multi-phased or multi-stage malware attacks, where you have a Trojan that downloads probably another Trojan, which can eventually download the malware or the ransomware file, and that can eventually exploit your system's weaknesses and gain access to the data that they're trying to steal. And then finally, data breaches are mostly caused by phishing attacks. About 90% of data breaches are being initiated using some sort of a phishing attack. We've seen a lot of these happen these days with the COVID-19 situation going on. We've seen phishing attacks on pretty much all kinds of organizations. Even the WHO at one point was subjected to a phishing attack, which was pretty disturbing. And this trend is only going up. So the number is probably even higher than 90% because this number is pre-COVID-19. And a lot of these attacks are actually started by internal threat actors. Now, these are people who have access to your internal resources, your network resources. They can have malicious intent, or they can be just a nice guy who happens to download the wrong file or download or click on the wrong link on the internet. And those happen a lot. And a lot of the times, these internal threat actors are at the center of these malware attacks and data breaches. Now, why are we talking about data breaches? First, I mentioned that data breaches are a big problem, and they're costing people a lot of money in terms of data lost. But it's also connected to different things like the ransom that you might have to pay in case of a ransomware attack. We've seen a huge spike in ransomware attacks all over the world, but specifically in the United States, a lot of the government officials, a lot of the government offices have been subjected to these attacks. Then obviously loss of revenue and brand damage are key factors when we talk about data breaches. Regulatory fines are one of the biggest things that we've seen ever since GDPR came into play. We've seen the fines only go further up in numbers to the point that people are now paying millions of dollars for each data breach that they're subjected to. And then obviously there are lawsuits and investigation costs that are added on top of this. And if you look at the chart, you can clearly see that in terms of data breaches that are happening, India is number 2 in Asia, and that is a big number. And part of the reason is because it's just there are so many people, there's so much data on those people that is being held by all these different organizations. So we talked about internal threat actors and the fact that they are always almost always at the center of these attacks. Unfortunately, they're not always aware of the damage that they're causing. And that's part of the reason why we have Zero Trust or the Zero Trust model nowadays. So the whole idea behind Zero Trust is to trust nobody. You have to limit excessive user privileges. You have to make sure that all of your solutions are enabling compliance standards. You have to make sure that you have centralized visibility, control, analytics, and automation so that the human error factor can be lowered down. You have to make sure that your solutions are really easy to use and that they support diverse integrations, and they're not really creating bottlenecks within your network. And you also have to enable micro-parameters within your network. And then obviously with Zero Trust, the basic idea is visibility is really, really important. Visibility is key to a Zero Trust model, and you have to have visibility into users, data, network activities, and so on. But unfortunately, when we talk about encryption, it introduces new challenges and complexity into the whole Zero Trust paradigm. Because encryption started with the idea of providing users with privacy to protect their data on the go between the client and the server to stop snooping attacks from happening. But it was never meant to provide you with full security. That's where you have security devices. But those devices will be blind to encrypted traffic, because if you're using legacy solutions or even solutions that are new, but they don't support encryption, you're just blind to that data. You're never going to see what's happening in that traffic. And the bad guys actually know about this. And this is a big problem because more than 90% of the internet is actually encrypted these days. This is data taken from Google transparency reports, but you can go to any browser, any website data, and you can clearly see that more than 90% of the internet is actually encrypted, and it is slowly moving towards 100%. We're probably never going to achieve 100%, but we're moving towards that number. So visibility, we've already established that visibility into encrypted traffic and overall visibility is really important. But unfortunately for us, visibility is not just as simple as making some simple upgrades to your existing security devices. You have these existing security solutions that are trying their best to position themselves into the whole, hey, we can do decryption of your traffic. Unfortunately, with that, a lot of the times they're doing decryption based on software. So you have these software patches applied to all of these solutions. They make those solutions costly, and you still get inferior performance. And in order to fix that, you have to buy newer devices. The second thing is inflexible deployment. Most of these solutions, whether these are legacy dedicated decryption solutions, or whether you have a firewall doing decryption for you, these are disruptive and incomplete, and they can't really support all of the other devices that you have within your network. And then finally, a lot of these solutions are difficult to operationalize. A lot of the times we've seen customers buy these solutions and they just sit on the table in your lab, and they just never really deploy them because they're so hard to use and deploy. So let's explain that point further. Let's look at a typical network where you have a diverse set of different security devices, because obviously for each different kind of device, for each different kind of attack, you have to have a specific kind of security device to counter that attack. Now with these devices, if you're doing decryption and re-encryption on each of these solutions, you don't have a single point of decryption. What that does is you have these performance bottlenecks within your network. You have to have separate decryption licenses on all of these devices, and that's an additional cost on each device. And then you have to make sure that you make upgrades, which can be fairly expensive, because if you're not meeting your performance requirements with your existing solution, you have to buy a bigger one. And then obviously the fact that SSL decryption or TLS decryption in itself is a quite compute intensive process, it can create a lot of problems. On top of that, the fact that each device has to do decryption, inspection, and re-encryption can create a lot of performance bottlenecks within your network, and you never get the full visibility into all of your traffic from one location. That is a big problem. So now you're stuck with this question. Do you take that performance hit at each and every appliance as your fate and you just accept that? Or you say, okay, I'm not going to do any TLS SSL inspection. Well, none of those options is a good one. And that's why we have to look for a solution that is a dedicated and centralized decryption solution made with the intent of doing decryption that is really good at doing it as well. And that's where we come to A10 Network's SSL Insight solution. So with the SSL Insight, it's a versatile, dedicated decryption solution that provides you with visibility into all of your traffic at really high performance numbers. We are highly efficient and flexible. We can be deployed into any kind of network that you might have. We can work with any other kind of device that literally connects to the network. We have the idea of multi-layered security services. So you can you don't just get a decryption solution, you get a bunch of other security features as well. And then finally, we are extremely easy and simple to use. In fact, our device can actually be deployed in 3 minutes tops, and it's really easy and ready to use in less than 5 minutes or 3 minutes. It's extremely easy. And then also, we have a centralized visibility solution and controller that can actually connect to multiple SSL Insight deployments within your networks. As I mentioned, full visibility into traffic is the key idea behind SSL Insight. That is the main reason why we have this solution. We can provide full visibility into all kinds of different protocols that you can see. For example, even SSH is decrypted. We have dynamic port inspection, so we make sure that even if the attackers are using non-standard ports, we can still intercept and decrypt that traffic and provide you with visibility. With the full proxy architecture that we have, we make sure that we have granular control over all the traffic, so we don't miss anything out. Even if there's a new Cipher or TLS version introduced into the network, we don't break. We actually do not compromise on the network uptime or security of your network. And then finally, we can be deployed in different kinds of ways. We can be deployed in a bump-in-a-wire deployment, or we can be deployed as a layer 3 device. We can also be deployed as a transparent proxy as well as an explicit proxy. And we can work with all kinds of devices as well. Whether you want to have an explicit or transparent proxy within the network, you can connect those as well. As you can see, we create something called the secure decrypt zone. You can put all of your security devices in the secure decrypt zone. We do the decryption for you. We just send that decrypted traffic to those security devices. They inspect it in clear text, send it back to us. We re-encrypt it and send it on its way to the internet. In terms of threats coming into the network, we have different services as well as the capability of decrypting inbound traffic as well, so that we make sure that you have bidirectional SSL visibility into your traffic. So what goes into the secure decrypt zone? This is just to give you an idea of some of our many technical partners. This diagram on the screen should also show you the diversity of different kinds of devices in different deployments that we work with. A lot of these devices are either using ICAP, or they're on a tap, or they're actually inline, and we work with all kinds of these devices. Compliance, as I mentioned, is a key component of Zero Trust model. So obviously, we take compliance very seriously. We have the capability of selectively bypassing traffic according to your compliance standards. If you're talking about, for example, healthcare data, we will bypass that. If you have any personal financial data, we can actually either bypass that for GDPR specifications, or we can redact the data and basically make the personally identifiable information unreadable for any of the security devices. At the same time, with GDPR, the biggest problem is that if you have a data breach, you are going to be fined because you are responsible for the data that you hold on your customers. So we make sure with our dedicated decryption solution and security services that none of the data breaches actually happen, and you're protected against that. And obviously, we have high speed and detailed logging. We can actually connect to a bunch of different SIMs as well. So we make sure that you're compliant with PCI DSS standards as well. Now, as I mentioned, we have multi-layered security services. So I'm just going to briefly talk about some of these. So we have application firewall. So you have full visibility into all the application traffic. And based on that, based on the application layer information, you can actually block or allow certain applications. We have the threat investigator, which you can use to actually investigate the threat level of different websites that your users are going to make sure that you have the best policies applied to all of your devices. We obviously have URL filtering as a feature as well. You can use that to block known bad websites for your users. We have ICAP integration. So unlike some of the legacy solutions, you don't have to go out and buy separate solutions just for ICAP. You can use our solution to integrate with other ICAP-enabled security devices as well. And then threat intelligence and user ID-based traffic filtering are some of the features that are really important, specifically when we talk about protecting our users, protecting our data in the Zero Trust model. So then finally, I want to talk about simplicity and ease of use. So we have something called the app-centric templates. It's a specialized GUI for all of our devices, which can be used to deploy our solution in 3 steps in about 3 to 5 minutes It's really streamlined, easy to use. It comes with its own dashboard. It comes with a configuration dashboard that you're seeing on screen so that you can make sure that you know what's deployed with your device. And you can change the known settings with just a click of a button and look at it very easily. And we also have a really simplified troubleshooting wizard as well. And it's just one click of a button will find all the problems that you might have in your deployment, and you can easily pinpoint those problems and fix those without any hassle. Then I mentioned centralized management and visibility. So we have something called the Harmony Controller from A10 Networks. With its SSLI app, you get the same wizards, but for multiple devices. So you can have multiple devices deployed across the globe. Or even if we're talking about India, you can have one device deployed in Mumbai, the other can be deployed in New Delhi. And you can have this one controller with centralized management and visibility capabilities. So you have uniform policies applied across all of your devices, and you can have full visibility into whatever's happening in all of those devices, whether it's on the application level or otherwise. And SSL Insight is not just a new solution, it is a tried and tested solution. You can see some of the financial sector names on the screen. We have Indian Overseas Bank, Karnataka Bank, for example. Even in the IT/ITES vertical, we have customers like Income Tax Department of India, who we've been working with, and they have successful deployments of our device and our solutions, and they've been really happy with this. So it's a tried and tested solution that we've been deploying in India for the past few years as well. Now, if you want to learn more about our solution, make sure you go to our room in this event, and you can actually talk to some of our representatives. But if you want to go to our website, you can see the link on the screen. You can go to our product page and look at the product details. You can find the data sheet over there as well. We have some informative YouTube videos on our YouTube channel at A10 Networks, so you can look at that as well. If you want to learn about Zero Trust and why Zero Trust is incomplete without TLS decryption, you can check out the white paper. Or if you want to learn about how you can protect your users and organization against the rising attacks during COVID-19, you can look at our blog post as well. With that, I would like to thank you for your attention and for attending this session. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask. Thank you.